We were holding at a Mishnah on Vav Amud Beis. Mishnah's Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Yeah, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. And schus of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Should be a refuah shleima for Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah, Aaron David Alevi ben Minucha de Lester, Avram Rafal ben Sarah and Sharon Shal Alevi ben Miriam Adel, and Sarah Techia Basnuni. So the Mishnah says like this: Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov is not so common, but whatever he says is supposed to be accurate. Mishnase kavanaki, the Gemara tells us that kav, it's a small amount, but naki, it's pure. So Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says, if there is water that's in that circular hole around the tree, you're allowed to take that water, make a channel, and draw it to the next tree, to let it go around from tree to tree. But you're not allowed to water the whole field just because you have water there already. We're referring to a beis habal, that it's a field that does not need water. And just to do that extra, just for harvacha, to have the extra increase your profit, that's not allowed. Apparently for the trees, it's a pseida. It would be a loss. And for the other things, it's not a loss. Morning. Grain that was not watered before the holiday, you're not allowed to water them. I guess they get used to not drinking. Apparently it was good before, it's going to be fine now. So you're not allowed to water them on Chol HaMoed. Chacham say no, you're allowed to water the rest of the field, and you're also allowed to water the grain that didn't have water before Yom Tov. Rashi tells us that who's the Chachamim Reb Meir, that on the first Amud we had towards the bottom, we had a brisa that says Mayan ayetz betchila mashkim afil sedei beis habal. Reb Meir allowed you to water a beis habal. Very lenient opinion. Said that you're allowed to do that, so that would be Reb Meir over here that allows us. Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda. Bring another source for this. Amar Rav Yehuda. Im ha'isa sada metunenes, it's mutter. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov was strict about watering the field. He said you can only water the trees. Rabbi Yehuda says that if the field was moist, metunenes, then you're allowed to water it. If it was originally moist and dried up, you're allowed to water it.
Did you just start the Gemara?
Yeah, I just started the Gemara. Chanya Nami Hachi was also taught in the Brisa, when they said that you're not allowed to water the field, which is a beis habal, a field that doesn't require water, it's on the bottom of the mountain, usually doesn't need water, you're not allowed to water it on the Moed. They were talking about when it didn't get water before Moed. But if it did get water before the Moed, then you're allowed to water it on Chol HaMoed. Maybe the pshat is that the amount of water that you need to give it is less. It would be less tircha. If it was watered before Moed, then you're allowed to water on Moed, means that it's less. I'm thinking like what it's used to drinking, how much water it needs because it had before. But could be it's because the soil was already moist once. So you don't have to give it so much. So that would be easier. Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says, the kivan de have lecha ad hashta ilay mashkela have pseidi yisera. Because it was wet until now, if you don't give it more water, it's going to be a loss. You know, it's used to growing in a certain type of soil, a moist soil, muddy. So then it needs that extra water. Then it goes on. The Brisa says, if the field was moist, then you're allowed to water it. The ain mashkin sedei garid b'mayid. You're not allowed to water a dry field. You don't need to water it. It doesn't require the watering. Chachamim matirin b'zeh b'zeh, and the Chachamim allow both. Who is the Chachamim? Chachamim is Reb Meir. Reb Meir that allows you to water a stay beis habal on Cholamayid would allow this as well. Amar Ravina. Ravina says, Shma mina. From this we see, Hai tarbitza, that this garden, Shari letarbutze b'chala d'mayada. Yeah, it's funny, the word seems the same. You're allowed to sprinkle water on it, maybe because a garden they would sprinkle water on. You're allowed to sprinkle water on it on Cholamayid. What's Ravina saying? Apparently, according to the Chachamim, he's following the Chachamim. That's the way Rashi learns this. The Chachamim say that you're allowed to water a stay beis habal, a dry field. You're allowed to water a dry field. And you're allowed to water the rest of the field if it goes from tree to tree. Even allowed to water if it wasn't watered before the mayit. You're also allowed to water the garden. The logic goes like this. Sedei garid my taima. A dry field. Why were you allowed to water it according to the Chachamim? Because the afla mashvile charfa, what would have grown late is now going to grow early. Charf is like sharp, and afla is delayed. So it comes quickly. It's going to make it blossom or produce quicker, so to fruit quicker. So hachanami afla mashvile charfa, by the garden as well. If you water, it's going to make it come quicker. That's Rashi's pshat. Rabbeinu Chananel has a different pshat over there. Rabbeinu Chananel learns like this. He says, Ravina says, Shema mina hay tabitza shari l'tabutzi b'chala d'mayit. He says that apparently you're allowed to water the garden. And Rabbeinu Chananel says now that the Gemara comes in with a question, not as a proof. Question is 1 second. Sedei garid my taima. Why were you not allowed to water the not the Chachamim's opinion, the other opinion? Why are you not allowed to water a dry field? The afla mashvile charfa is not considered a good reason to water the field just to get the produce to grow earlier. That's not a good reason. So here also, you're only getting the produce to come earlier. That's not a good reason. You're not allowed to water it. And the Gemara asks a question on Ravina and doesn't give any answer. The two pshatim. Rashi's learning that the Gemara is supporting Ravina and it's following the Chachamim's opinion. And Rabbeinu Chananel is saying the Gemara is challenging Ravina and it doesn't answer it. Okay. Tanur Rabbanan. Wow.
Looks like a tomato.
It's
Honey crisp. Organic.
honey crisp.
Organic. Thank God. Nobody sprayed it.
Marbitzin, you're allowed to sprinkle water. Stay lavan b'shvius. On a grain field. On the Shemitah. It's a big chiddush. What's the pshat? Avaloi b'mayit, but not on Cholamayid. What should the difference be, Shemitah and Cholamayid? Shemitah, we said it didn't have to do with tircha. Shemitah had to do with. Actually, we said that Shemitah was talking about Shemitah mid'Rabbanan, right? We had two answers. If it's talking about Shemitah Bizman Hazeh, which was the opinion of Rabbi, which is the Rabbanan, or following the opinion of the Rabbanan, which only certain things are prohibited. Obviously, not told us. That was Machlekes Rava and Abaya. But whatever the case is, you're not allowed to do this on the Mayat. Like we said, you're not allowed to water a stay beis habal. V'hatanya, but we have a problem. We have a brisa that says marbitzin bein b'mayit bein b'shviyas, that you are allowed to water on Shemitah and on Cholamayid. Amar Rav Huna like kasha. Rav Huna says it's not a question. Why not? Because it's a machlokes. Ha Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov was the first opinion of our Mishnah that says you're not allowed to water the rest of the field on Moed, on Chol Hamoed. That's this opinion over here that says you're not allowed to water the stay Lavan. Ha Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan say that you are allowed to water. Tani Idach, we have another brisa. Marbitin stay Lavan Erev Shvius Kadesh Yitz Yirakas B'Shvius. Some Chiddush. You're allowed to sprinkle water on the grain field before Shvius so that you'll get the grain to grow on Shemitah. Yeah. What's the shot over here? We're supposed to stop before. He said, no, maybe the heter over here is Rabban Gamliel that says we go all the way up. Nowadays, we go all the way up to Rosh Hashanah. You don't have to stop.
What was Tircha?
Tircha was a exertion, toil, too much bother.
Lots of Shemitah, only business. Still farm your land for your personal consumption.
I don't think so. You can't touch it. You could eat, but you weren't allowed to plant anything.
But you can eat whatever's growing.
Yeah.
So I guess when we talk about here, about the water on Shemitah, we're referring to the business aspect, not the personal aspect.
Right. Maybe. I don't know.
I'm saying it wouldn't be a chiddush that you could do for yourself personally, so you're allowed to eat on Shemitah.
I know, but this is work that's putting in. This is not taking in the grain. This is watering. Why is this allowed? Not only is this allowed, you're even allowed to water on Shemitah, but not so that the grain should grow on Shemitah. You're allowed to water on Shemitah so that you should get grain after Shemitah.
What is a white field exactly?
White field is just a grain field.
Oh.
There's no shade because there's no trees. Yeah, I think we're going to have to learn this either like Abaya or Rava, that either it's Shemitah Midirabanan, and they allow things that are going to be a loss, Abaya's Pshat, or Rava's Pshat, that watering a field is not considered one of the malachas that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to plant, you're not allowed to plow, but watering you're allowed to do. That's a tolda. Okay. Sudden esa ishus vesachbarim misteha ilan umisteha lavan kedarke b'mayed b'shvius. The Mishnah says like this: you're allowed to trap. Ishus are moles. These rodents, and achbarim are mice from a field of trees and from a grain field. Normally, they ruin the field, so you're allowed to get rid of them. On whether it's Chol Hamoed or whether it's Shemitah, you're allowed to do that. But Chachamim Aimrim, if you notice, I have a little star over there. I don't know if you have a star. It says Rabbi Yehuda Aimer on the star. That's very important because the Gemara later on is going to quote this opinion in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, not in the name of Chachamim. So let's say it's Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. You're allowed to do this normally in a regular manner, only from a field of trees and from an orchard, but not from a grain field. Why? Because the damage that it causes the trees is much greater than what it causes to the grain. You see, it could ruin the roots of the tree, which is a huge loss because trees take years to grow, and this could ruin it.
The other way around,
But
it would take like much longer for a tree to die from lack of water.
No, but I think it ruins the roots.
I suppose.
And then by the grain, what's it going to do? It's going to eat the roots of the grain. So how much can it eat? It's not. It's maybe I don't know the ins and outs of this. But mistay 11 shlai kedarka, you can't do it in the normal manner. Makrin es hapirza b'mayit, you're allowed to fill in a breach in the wall. on Cholamayid. And Ubashviyas Baina Kedarka. And Shemitah, you're allowed to do much more than that. You can mamish build it normally. So to fill in is like some sort of patch. That's for Cholamayid, you put on a patch. But for Shemitah, you can mamish build a wall. My Ishus. What does it mean, Ishus? Amar Rav Yehuda Beria. Rav Yehuda says, Rav Yehuda is Rav Yehuda Bar Yecheskel, the student of Rav and Shmuel. Beria shein la'inayim. It's a creature that doesn't have eyes. A mole. A mole, I think, has eyes, but I think it can't. Its eyes get covered.
What's the question? What we consider that?
We don't know what the animal is.
Why do we care?
Well, it says you're allowed to trap it.
Yeah, but why are we consider what? You're allowed to trap animals in your field. What's the issue?
Oh.
What's the question?
You have so much free time.
No, it's only animals that are going to cause destruction. Which animals are that? So we're trying to figure that out.
Depends on what you're growing.
Amar iguanas.
Huh?
Iguanas. Amar Rava Bar Yishmael. Wow. Vitema Rab Yemer Bar Shalmei. Mikra. What's the pasuk for this? Kamay Shablul Thomas Yehalech. Nafal Eshes Bal Chazu Shemesh. Shablul is the snail. Thomas, it melts. Yehalech, and it disappears. Like the snail melts and disappears. Nafal Eshes, the mole falls. Bal Chazu Shemesh, that has not seen the sun. I never thought that the pshat of Eshes was a mole. I sounded like a woman. Nafal Eshes, something, wife of, I don't know. Okay, that's what the Gemara says is what it means. The Ishus, the mole falls because or a mole that has never seen the sun means it's blind. Okay. This doesn't see where it's walking. Tanu Rabbanan. You're allowed to trap the moles and the mice from a grain field and from a tree field, from an orchard, normally. That doesn't fit with our Gemara, right? It does. No, it fits with the first opinion of the Mishnah. It doesn't fit with Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, the first opinion of the Mishnah said you were allowed to do it normally. Rabbi Yehuda was the one that said that there's a difference between trees and grain. Or Chachamim. It doesn't fit with the second opinion. It fits with the first opinion. And you're allowed to destroy the holes of the ants. Ketzan Machriven, how do you destroy the holes of the ants? Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Aimer, filling it in doesn't destroy it. They're fine with that. He says, maybe offer michar zev and Iceland teichar zeh, vein chayken zeh zeh. You create a fight between them. What you do is you take dirt from another hole and you put it into this hole, and then they get all confused about the smell. They think that there's an enemy in there, and they strangle each other.
Wow, first exterminator.
Yeah, I have to tell this to the exterminator. He's wasting his time with all that poison. Just needs to get another ant hole. Amar Rav Yemer Bar Shalmei Mishmei da Abaya v'hu dekoi betray Avri Nara. Rav Yemer Bar Shalmei, who we just had before, quoted the pasuk. He says in the name of Abaya that you have to get. It's not a simple ant hole. You have to get a hole, an ant hole that's across the river. Otherwise, they're used to the scent. It has to be something that they're not used to. V'hu deleka gisha, and also you have to make sure that there was no bridge. Because if there's a bridge, then they would be used to that scent also. V'hu deleka gamla, and you also have to make sure that not only is there no bridge, but there's no plank that could get them across. V'hu deleka mitzvah, and you also have to make sure that there's no rope. Because even if it would be just no bridge, no plank, but it could be they could have got the scent across by the rope. Ad kama. Now, how far away is it? Ad parsa. It has to be a parsa away. Now, it's unclear what the Gemara means here. Rashi says that even together with the no bridge and the no rope and the no plank, it still needs to be a parsa way. Well, I'm saying Rashi. It's not Rashi. It's Rabbeinu Gershon or whatever. Well, it's printed in the Rashi spot. Okay.
It seems that the Gemara here is adding a new condition. Until now, we've been discussing the trade-off, the tirka versus the loss.
Right.
Now he's adding a new condition, and it has to be effective. Objectively, it has to be an effective remedy to prevent the loss.
That's interesting. I guess before we knew what it was effective. You water the field, you water the field. We know how it works. There was no suffix about that. Does this work? We did speak about fumigating, though. That was one detail there that we could have mentioned it earlier, that it has to be the right sort of thing. We didn't mention that. Rabbi Yehuda says, that getting rid of these animals, trapping these animals, you're only allowed to do it in the normal way from a field of trees, but not from a grain field. The Gemara tells us what's considered the normal way. You dig a hole. In the hole, you put the trap. It walks right into it because it walks on the ground. It's making channels through the ground. You find where its tunnel is, and you put the hole straight in the tunnel, and it will walk through it. And it's blind also. What's a not normal way of doing it? Umarada or Maradeid. There's two versions here. Maradeid Adam mitachta. You stick a spit in the ground and you bang it with a hammer. Marada means you remove the dirt. Maradeid means you flatten it. Maradeid ha'adama mitachta would mean that you just flatten it into the ground, I guess. You bang it down, and it's different than just putting a trap there and walking away. So it's funny that what seems to be a harder job is mutter, because it's shlei kedarkei. I would say the easier job is you just put the trap there and walk away. Over here, you have to mamish dig, and over there you have to dig to put the trap in. Here you just maybe this is actually easier. Question is if you're going to catch it. Okay, Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov or Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, when they said that you're allowed to trap these animals in a grain field, but in an abnormal way, that's only if the grain field is near the city. But if it's near an orchard, then if you look at kedarkei, then you can do it even in the normal way. They're not limited to the grain field. They'll end up, if they're in the grain field, they'll go to the next field right over, which is an orchard, and they'll cause damage there. Yeah. You're allowed to fill in the holes in the wall on Chol HaMoed. Kate said makrin. How do you fill it in? It didn't tell us yet. Rabbi Yosef says, Rabbi Yosef is the friend of Rabbah, teacher of Abaya. Hutza v'dafna. Talking about Hutza v'dafna. Remember this from Bava Basra? Hutza,
yes.
Hutza is palm branches, and Daphna is another type of branch. Daphna is actually a name. Oh yeah, Daphna is like a bay leaf tree or something. So yeah, I wonder why that became a name.
Yeah.
Maybe it means something else, or maybe people are like rose. That's a name. Yeah, in Hebrew there's a name Varda. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
My sister's name is Vered.
Oh, Vered. Uh-huh. Yeah, a flower, a rose. So Hutza v'dafna. It's not a real wall. What we're talking about. We're talking about that. It's just like cosmetic. You're filling it in so people can't look inside. This doesn't stop anything. It's palm branches. It's nothing. That's what you're allowed to do on Cholamai. That's how you can fill it in. The Masnisa Tana, in the Brisa it says, "Tsar b'tzror ve'inatach betit." Oh, much bigger. You're allowed to fill it in with gravel. You just can't put the cement in. As you're allowed to fill it in. You're not allowed to rebuild it. So what does it mean fill it in and not rebuild it? So in the Brisa it says that you fill it in with gravel, and then you'll have to do the cement later. But Amar Rav Chisda leishanu ala kesel gina. What are we talking about over here? Talking about a wall around the garden. That's what you want to block. Aval kesel chatzer, but the wall of the courtyard, that's a different story. Baina kedarka, that your mamash allowed to build even on Cholamayid. So what's someone going to steal from a garden if there's a breach in the wall? Someone's going to climb in and eat some cucumbers.
Garden,
What is that?
scarecrow, garden, no.
But in the courtyard, they used to live half in the courtyard. That was like right? Like in Israel, the Merpeset. That's everything. So
That's interesting about scarecrows. I don't know if it's retarded to make a scarecrow. That's unrelated.
So this is a real loss. If it's a wall of a courtyard, that's a real loss. Someone can come in and take your item. Okay, Lema Messiah will bring us support. You want to hear the support? Support is that if you have a wall that's leaning over to Rosh Hashanah, very scary, you're allowed to break it down and build it again because it's dangerous. If that's the case, you're allowed to build also a wall of a chatzar. Gemara says, Hassam, what are you talking about? Over there, keduktani taima pnei sakan. Over there, it's a danger. The wall of your courtyard isn't a danger. It's not like it's going to cause damage. It's just a protection. So v'ikadamri, some say it like this. Tashma, come and listen. That a wall that's leaning over the Rosh Hashanah, you're allowed to break it down and build it because it's dangerous. Because it's dangerous, yes. But not if it's not dangerous, you're not allowed to rebuild it. This brisa is a question on Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said you're allowed to build the wall of a chatzar because you want to protect it from thieves, but there's no danger. It's just a loss of money, but it's not a danger. Amalach Rav Chisda would answer you like this. What is going on with the wall that's leaning? It says, Hassam, Seiser, Ubayna. Over there, you're allowed to do two steps. You're allowed to break it down plus build it up. You just build it up. You're not being Seiser. There's a breach already. So for that, you're allowed to do. Hassam Nami, list of livni. 1 second. What's the problem if it's leaning over? It could fall. So if you're not allowed to do anything, if you're only allowed to do like a little bit to protect, if you're only allowed to protect from danger, so then break it down, but you're not allowed to build it up. Why are you saying you're allowed to break it and build it and rebuild it? If the whole idea is just danger.
The art scroll also brings in that part of the danger is to protect passersby, that the wall should not fall and hurt pedestrians.
Right.
So not just for danger to protect their own property, but rather also to protect society.
Right. Right. So that's our difference here. Rav Chisda was allowing us to build to protect property, but the Brisa was only allowing to protect pedestrians, from people getting hurt. So that's a question it's a question on Rav Chisda. We don't see that you're allowed to protect property. So now the Gemara says Rav Chisda makes a difference to protect, as a protection from people getting hurt, the pedestrians, that you're allowed to break it down and build it up. But to protect property, you're only allowed to build it up. So the Gemara now says, 1 second. To protect people from getting hurt, you only have to break it down. Building it up is going back to protecting property. So it says, Imkain, our concern is like this. Imkain mimna v'lei seiser. If a person knows he's not going to be able to rebuild it, he's not going to break it down either. He's going to leave it there and hope for the best. We don't want him to do that. We don't want him to hope for the best. So I'm not walking by there. We want him to build it up. So we want him to make sure no one gets hurt. So in order to make sure that he'll break it down, we have to allow him to build it as well. Or else he'll keep postponing it until it's like. So we allow him to do that. Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, Masnisin Nami Dayaka. Our Mishnah is also precise. You could be medayik this from the Mishnah. Diktani, the Mishnah says, Bashviyas Baina Kedarke. So on Shemitah, you're allowed to build it normally. However, not on the Chalamayid. On Chalamayid, you weren't allowed to build it normally. Right? We're allowed to fill it in Mayid. That was the difference. Makrin as a pirza versus Shvius, you're allowed to build it normally. Dehecha. Where was that fence that you're talking about? Rav Chizda's Chiddush was that fence was only by a garden, not by a chutzner. Ilay med the chutzner. If you're telling me you're allowed to build a courtyard wall, what's the problem in Shemitah to build a courtyard wall? It's not planting. Of course you're allowed to, and it's a loss. Of course you're allowed to build a wall. Elalav de Gina. It must be that we're dealing with the garden. Even though it appears that you're protecting the fruits, you're still allowed to do it. To Raya to Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda says that in the garden, that's where this whole discussion was. Because in the courtyard, Rav Chizda allows you to build even on Chalamayid. The Raya is from the Mishnah, is that on Shemitah you're allowed to build. What are you allowed to build? In the garden. Because in the courtyard you were always allowed to build. Okay. Next Mishnah, very interesting. Reb Meir Reimer, Rayin es-Sanagoyim, lahakel, or betchila, lahakel, avalei lahachmer. Let's leave out the word betchila. Reb Meir says that when a kohen goes to look at tzaras, someone calls up the kohen, he says, you got to come, there's tzaras, to take a look, tell us what it is. If it's tahar or tameh, and he makes this is all on Chalamayid. So, what does the kohen do? Says Reb Meir says he's allowed to look at it and say that it's tahar, but he's not allowed to look at it and say that it's tameh. We don't want to spoil his. He says, "What is it?" He says, "I'll tell you later."
Oh, wow.
He doesn't want to spoil his Yom Tov. The samachta b'chagecha. You can't. Yeah. The Chacham say no. Leila hakav leila hachman. The kohen should not go. He should not go to look at it. He can't say anything. Once he goes, he's going to be in trouble. Okay.
So even though if there's still a doubt, then I guess it's still.
It's nothing until the kohen says something. The kohen has to say what. So right now it's nothing. Tanya Reb Meir Reimer was taught in a brayso. Reb Meir says, "Rayin es-Sanagoyim lahakel avalei lahachmer." Reb Meir says that he can look at it to make it tahar, but he can't look at it to make it tameh. Shema to nizkak leilahakel. I'm sorry, I skipped. Rabbi Yosi Aimer. Rabbi Yosi says leilahakel v'leilahachmer. You can't do either. Rabbi Yosi would be the chachamim. Why? Shema to nizkak leilahakel nizkak leiaf lahachmer. Because if he comes to tell him that it's tahar, he's going to be compelled to also tell him if it's tameh. Amar Rebbe. Rebbe says, Nirin divrei Rab Meir b'muskar, divrei Rab Yosi b'muchlit. Rebbe does this sometimes. Rebbe says, usually what the Gemara does in this, there's a machlokes here. Rebbe wants to paskin like both of them, but in different cases. So he says, if the person is quarantined, then we'll go like Reb Meir, that the kohen can show up and and determine that he's tahar. But if the person is already in muchlat, he's already Well, it's the term for mukhlat. It's already determined that he has tzaras. He's not in quarantine. He's actually has it. So then we follow Rabbi Yossi that the kohen shouldn't come. It's a little surprising. Because what harm can the kohen do? I mean, it can't get any worse than that. He has tzaras. What's he going to say? Yeah, you got tzaras.
Is this only in Tzarat in regards to an individual, or is it also applicable to a building?
Yeah, it seems like the person.
Just
It
the
seems
person.
like the person. That's what it seems like. Yeah. It may be the same thing, but it seems from the language here, it seems like it's, I'm not sure. Amar Rava says, "Betar kuli amalei pligid b'lechazulei." If the person is perfectly pure, he just has a little spot on him. It's like, I wonder what this is. No one ever said anything if he's tamei or muskar, and there was nothing beforehand. This is the very first time that he sees this. So Rava says that everyone agrees that the kohen should not come to look at it on Chol Hamoed. He'll spoil his holiday. So we'll deal with it later. Behesker, Rishon, if it's in the first quarantine, what happens is if you don't have all the qualifications, so they quarantine him and they see what happens. Does it spread? Right? If he gets the qualifications of being tummy.
Where's the tircha? I'm just checking.
No, there's no tircha here. The problem over here is spoiling the fellow's Yom Tif, ruining his joy on the holiday.
Oh, so, okay.
The Kuli Amalei Pligi the Chazalei. If he's already been quarantined, everyone agrees that he should show up. The kohen should come and take a look. Ki Pligi, interesting. Even Rabbi Yossi says he should come. Ki Pligi, where is the machlekes? Behesker Sheni. When it comes to the second quarantine, Mar Savar, one master holds the kohen Talia Milsa. That's Reb Meir's view. That the kohen has free choice what he wants to say. He could, if he wants, he doesn't have to tell him. He could say, I'll tell you later. So it goes like this. Itar, if it's pure. Amaletar, so he says, okay, you're good to go. V'itame, and if he sees that it's tame, so shasik, could be quiet. He doesn't have to pronounce him. Say, I'm not saying. Let me think about it. I'm going to sleep on it. So Umar Savar, the other master holds, that's Rabbi Yossi. You don't have a choice. You have to pronounce whatever it is. You don't have that liberty to just to plead the fifth. Yeah. Yeah.
So there is a situation where we know the client knows the problem, but doesn't say anything, but they carry it out and then we'll prosecute.
Right. That's a good point. Avram Nosson is saying that when it came to the house, it doesn't mean the kohen would show up and then he would take it out. He would take out his items before the kohen came. Does it say that the kohen would come and then the kohen would tell him take everything out?
That's why I always understood it. If there was a problem, then
if that's the case, then we find clearly that the kohen could delay it for at least enough time for him to take it out. Yeah, if it would be on the house.
We'll cook your Shabbos meals and we'll finish cooking your Yantif and then we'll let you know, right? You don't want to ruin your Yantif, so go finish up your meals.
Yeah. Amar Mar, the master taught. We're going to go back to discuss Rebbe's view. Amar Rebbe says, Nirin div Rabbi Yossi b'muchlet v'div Rabbi Meir b'muskar. That it makes sense. He's going to paskin that Rabbi Yossi is correct b'muchlet, that he should not show up to make it. What's he going to do over there? He's already tummy. He shouldn't show up. What's he going to say? The only thing he can say is he's still tummy or he's tar. It doesn't get worse. It's very surprising. B'divra Meir b'muskar. And it makes sense that when the person is quarantined, that the kohen should show up and say at least that he's tar. The Gemara has a question. We have a brisa that says exactly the opposite. That nirin divri Rabbi Yosi b'muskar, that if he's in quarantine, the kohen should not show up. He's going to get worse. If the kohen shows up, he's going to have to tell him that he's tamei. And meanwhile, he's only in quarantine. That's only half a problem. It's going to get worse. And nirin divri Rabbi Meir b'muchlet, if he's already tamei, so how worse can it get? Let the kohen show up and tell him that he's tar. It's a question. So the Gemara answers Tanai Ali b'd Rebbe. It's actually a machlekes Tanaim in what Rebbe's opinion is. Two views over here. Goes like this. Mar Savar, one master holds, or one brisa holds, Tzavsa de Alma Adiflei, that he wants to be together with the world. So this would be, Reb Meir says that if he's muchlet, then he would, if he's already muchlet, means he's already 100% tzaras, he wants to come, he wants to get back to be with people. So he's been outside the camp yet. No one's been around him. It's like solitary confinement. So I want to get back with people. So we want the kohen to come and tell him tar. And so that's important. Mar Savar Tzavsa de Ishtei Adifalei. The other one holds, the other opinion holds that no, if he's already muchlat, this is very interesting. During the purification process of, if let's say the kohen comes and says that he's pure, he's not going to be allowed to be with his wife during the 7 days of purification. So although he can be together with people and schmooze, but he can't be together with his wife. So we rather him be together with his wife as a Matzaira. I didn't know Matzaira was allowed to be with his wife. The Gemara didn't either. We'll see in a moment. But that would be better than to have him be in communication with other people. The Gemara says, 1 second. What are you telling me? That it gets worse when he's getting purified? He's allowed to be with his wife while he has tzaras, and then when he's getting purified during those 7 days that you have to wait, so then it's forbidden. The Gemara says in. Yeah, it's true. V'hatanya, we even have a brisa. It says v'yashav michutz la'alei shivas yamim. This is a question. V'yashav la'alei chutz la'alei shivas yamim sheyasa b'tashav m'shamita. He has to sit out of his tent for 7 days. What does his tent mean? Ve'in alay alei ishtay. Means he has to be away from his wife for 7 days. How do we see that? Because after Matan Torah, it says that the people were allowed to return to their tents. That meant that they were allowed to go back to their wives. That meant the tent. So tent means the wife. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, it's a salif, or maybe Rebbe. Is that the no? It's not a Rebbe. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Shivas Yamim Yisperlai. There was supposed to be Rabbi Yomer. That you count 7 days. Yimei Svirai v'lo Yimei Chalutai. He has to be away from his wife only for the 7 days of counting of purification, but not while he was impure. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda Aimer. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, Zayin Yimei Svirai kal v'chaymer Yimei Chalutai. If while he's becoming pure, he can't be with his wife, for sure, when he's tummy, he can't be with his wife. It doesn't get worse.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It doesn't get worse when he's becoming pure. It should be getting better. And it was worse before. So if he's not allowed to be with his wife when he's during the purification, for sure he can't be with his wife when he's tummy. But Amar Reb Chia says, Danti lifnei Rebbe. Said this in front of Rebbe, Limadatanu Rabbeinu, Reb Chia was a student of Rebbe, that our teacher taught us, Yoisam loyhayaloi Uzio ela bimei chalutai. Uzio was a king, one of the kings of Yehuda, I think. And he had a son, Yoisam, that was considered a tzaddik. He was a king while his father was king. His father had saras, but he never sat in his father's chair. So anyway, if his father had saras, how was he born? How was Yosim born? Well, what Rebbe taught was that he had saras, and he was allowed to be with that. Yosim was born during when his father was a muchlat, when he had saras. You see, if that's the case, then someone with saras is allowed to be with his wife. Amaloi afani kachamarti. That's what I say. You're right. A Matzayr is allowed to be with his wife. When does it say he has to be out of his tent? That's only during the purification process. But my kamiflig, what's the machlekes here? Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda savar gali rachmana b'meisfira b'kolshkim mechalutei. The Torah tells us that he can't be with his wife during the purification process while he's counting the 7 days. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says kal v'chaymer when he's impure. Umar savar, the other one says my de gali gali, my de loy gali loy gali. It's only what the Torah tells me. The Torah tells me only that he's not allowed to be with his wife during the purification process. What it didn't tell me was during the days when he's actually tummy. It doesn't say anything. That takes us back to: is it good to tell the person that has tzaras that he's tar? If we paskin like Reb Meir, we're going to tell him he's not going to be allowed to be with his wife during the holiday, which he was beforehand. But he will be allowed to communicate with other people, be able to come back into the be together with other people if his purification starts. Okay, let's leave it over here.